Good evening, model railroaders, and welcome back to the Second Section podcast, where it's just regular folks talking about model railroading. I'm your host, Andy Dorsch, and joining me this evening is my co-host, Mike Ostertag. Mike, how you doing this evening?
I'm doing fantastic. This is going to be awesome. I'm all
Yes.
excited. This is going to be so great.
I know. I'm geeking out myself.
I know. I can't. I've been sitting there thinking about it in the engine all day. I'm like, okay, come on, 4 o'clock. 4 o'clock. Let's go. I want to tie up. Let's go. I want to go home.
Yeah. Mike and I got on the pre-show extra early to make sure everything was ready to rock and roll and essentially kind of cap off what we're calling Freelance Week on the second section. So we do a kind of a play on the Shark Week, right? So Shark Week was the big thing, and all things sharks on, was it the Nature Channel or something of that nature, National Geographic? Well, we're doing Freelance Week here on the second section, and it's kind of our little homage to the folks that spin up their own railroads, their own home names, and go through and get logos made and build just a whole new world outside of the prototype itself. So we couldn't think of a better way to celebrate that than having our friends from HomeShops here. So we have Doug Watts and Christopher Palmieri here. And then we also have Brad and Brady McClelland, and the stewards of the Virginian Ohio. So Chris, Doug, welcome back. I think you guys are due for the 5-timers. I think you're 5-timers now.
Oh, smoking jacket.
Yeah.
Well, I'll take the jacket.
Yeah, definitely.
Thank you very much for having us back. This is awesome.
Yeah. And then,
good to be here.
Yeah. And I do want to introduce Brad and Brady McClelland. So we've heard this, the section crew has heard the story of Chris and Doug, but if you just would be so kind as to just give us a little introduction about yourself, and then what are your interests in model railroading, and kind of how we ended up here today. And then we'll start with Brad, and then we'll go on to Brady. So welcome, Brad.
Well, thank you, Mike and Andy. Appreciate the invite. Thank you, Chris and Doug. Well, obviously my dad, Alan McClelland, he started B&O, and I was kind of from the diaper until, the end. I was pretty much involved with the V&O, and had a close relationship with my father. And so at this point, I am pretty much handing over everything to my oldest son, Brady. So he is starting to mold him on just on the V&O in general, and he knows all about it. I basically don't have to tell him anything.
Yeah,
he's pretty sharp on that. And I don't model myself. First mistake of the evening.
No.
I model railroad. Yeah, I do. So
now you had some early Conrail stuff. I remember running as a kid. I still have. You dip your toes in every once in a while, for sure.
Yeah, we did. When the boys were younger, I had a 4x8 sheet of plywood. We made a circle, and I ran all my old-timey Atlas and Athearn locomotives, and I painted them up early Conrail. And that's what was interesting to me, was to do that.
Nice.
It was a lot of fun, but it's not like I haven't lost interest. Just that
it's a bit different, right? It's because you manage are you one of the managers of the V&O Historical Society Facebook group?
Yep.
So that's like a full-time job in itself, or a hobby on its own, right?
It's it keep you busy. I was really surprised when we started this. Oh gee, I can't remember what it was. Anyway, Donald Dunn from Hazard, Kentucky said, "Hey, I want to do this. Are you okay with this?" I said, "Yeah, sure." So I became one of the admins, and luckily I have other people that are kind of surfing it, and they say, "Hey, check out this post," or "What do you think of this?" So my job keeps me away from home like 5 days a week, and so it's nice to have someone just kind of look over it. But yeah, it's fun. We just went over, got over 2,000 people joined up, and it's really been fun. And what surprises me the most is people that are Brady's age. There's one guy named Joe. Sorry, Joe, I can't remember your last name. But I posted a picture and I said, "It was at this town." And he goes, No, it was at this time. No. And he was right. It was amazing. Right. My dad always said, "Well, just wait till you go over 60 and you start forgetting stuff." And I said, you're my dad. What do you know?
Yeah.
My gosh.
Yes.
He's probably looking down at me saying, "See, I told you so."
Yeah.
So how long have you been managing, I guess, the legacy that is the Virginian in Ohio?
I think
So,
probably, I'd say the last 5 years, maybe longer than that.
sure.
It was at a point where my dad knew that, I'm trying to word this correctly, but he knew that it was time to start passing
Yeah.
things down. And I think it was about the time when I met Chris and Patrick Harris that he pretty much, he really wasn't into the Facebook, Twitter type of things. And he just said, "You just take care of it." And, he elected me vice president of archives, and, I'm living the dream job with that. 3 houses, a boat, pays real well.
I was going to say it must pay really well. We were
Right.
in the pre-show talking about how that there was going to be paid party for V&O employees. So
Yeah.
Stay tuned.
Hey, Brad, is it ever get to be surreal to see the global reach that your dad created with the V&O and how far out the recognition of that railroad really is globally? It's not just in the United States. I mean, people all over the world know who the model railroaders all over the world know who the V&O is.
Yeah, it's really strange. I still can't believe it. They'll say, "McClelland, is that are you Allen's related to Allen?" I said, "Yeah, it's my dad." And they're like, it's really, it is still
Instant
amazing.
celebrity status wherever you go.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's almost like one of those. It's one of those railroads that it, like, when all of us are gone, and Brady, you're your dad's age, it'll still be relevant. That to me is what the V&O is the sheer relevance of what your dad did, Brad. It was amazing about all of that, and it's timeless. It really honestly is.
yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's gonna. I mean, it was one of the first railroads that I had exposure to in model railroad and everything. There was the pictures of the blue FD-24, and oh my God, it was like this is a real railroad. And, apparently, it wasn't. I didn't find that out until I was probably almost close to 20. I thought it was a real railroad. So, yeah, it's just amazing.
It's funny you mention that because somewhere my dad told the story, and Brady, you probably remember it.
Yeah.
Someone came up to him and actually thought that the V&O was a real railroad, and she goes, "Our neighbor, he's a president of the Virginian Ohio Railway." he's a CEO and all that. And then he kind of had to say, well, this is, you have to come over to the basement to understand. I can't explain it to you.
Yeah. Like,
yeah.
I remember Grandpa saying a story about how someone was like, I went to Afton, Virginia, and I was looking around trying to find the right of way. Like where is it? He was like looking at maps and stuff like that. And had to kind of break the news softly. Just that.
That's
Sorry,
awesome.
Yeah, I remember
That is so cool.
He likes that. He likes that story a lot.
That's definitely a testament to how solid the storyline is that Alan and you guys developed together.
Yeah.
So
I know he was asked to go to New Zealand and Australia. So, he did leave an impression on many people around the world, which is pretty fascinating. For me, it's sometimes hard to believe that who he was and what he did was pretty amazing.
Oh, that's cool. So, Brady, why don't you give us a little bit of an introduction here about yourself and your interests in modeling and how you want, I guess, how are you going to play into the VNO here?
Yeah. So, pretty much was born into trains in general and just having that interest rail fanning.
Sure.
With especially with my dad, because it was like right out of the womb. I was on his back track side taking pictures. So, so it really was like very formative. And honestly, I think it'd be weirder if I wasn't into trains. It just being so exposed to it. But yeah, it really is kind of like what you guys were, what my dad was saying. Just it is very surreal to see the impact that my grandpa and the VNO had on other modelers and just the entire hobby. And yeah, it. Look into freelancing as well. Like when I was younger, my dad can say this, talk about this, is I had like I was pretty young, but I had like Milwaukee and Ohio, which was just like it was just like a freelance railroad that I was like, okay, I could run from Ohio to Milwaukee, and I can paint my own engines and stuff like that. And just the idea of the amount of creativity you can put into it.
Yes.
Really started to take to heart the aspects of this isn't just, a model railroad. It's a model of a railroad, like trying to best incorporate your railroad into existing transportation lines and just making it plausible, making it seem realistic. And I think that was really what interested me. So we can go into it later, but so I changed it up and started my own freelance railroad again, more based on like late 70s, early 80s
Sure.
regional railroads, and just post deregulation, the idea of and also after the Rock Island bankruptcy, basing a regional system on that, but also not to say that I don't also have interest in the VNO. Especially I had the pleasure of dispatching for the last few years and on Jerry Alber's Deepwater District on the V&O K&M sub, and that was great. Just especially kind of in those final years that I knew my grandpa, I liked to sit next to him and really, we'd be joking and just showing me just all the things, just how I was thinking about things, and how the V&O tied into other systems, especially the Virginian and the New York Central, which was pretty big on that layout.
That's one of the tricks, right, of doing a good freelance railroad is that plausibility, right? Like how much research, and it's almost like modeling the prototype in a sense, because if you want it to truly be a realistic representation of a railroad, you have to figure out all those different connections, and it's not an easy thing, and it's a challenge, but I think it's a great challenge personally.
Oh, absolutely. Honestly, I think I find just as much enjoyment in the research as I do modeling itself. Just tracking down old books, and the name's escaping me right now, but the federal rosters of all the freight cars in the system.
Oh, the OER or ORER, the equipment registers. Yeah,
exactly.
The equipment registers. Yep.
Yeah, and just seeing, is this plausible to have these 40-foot box cars in use into the early 80s? Well, maybe if they were specific use, and just and looking at maps, and just it's just incredible wealth of knowledge out there, and that's not even getting into all the models themselves and all the resources surrounding kit bashing and building kits and just all this. There's so many aspects I could go on for hours.
This Brady, this sounds like a conversation Andy and I just had about a week ago, because I was talking about, I have all these S-scale 40-foot boxcars, and I changed my era, and I'm like, okay, I want these to be end of life, still grain loading boxcars. What would they look like? Where would they go? How would they do that? And I was trying to do all this research on it. I mean, I'm sitting here going, every single word you're saying, I'm like, that sounds like me. Yeah,
that is awesome. You, Mike.
It is me. It's 100%, because I get lost in that research for my Farland Terminal Railroad, but then I end up going down every other rabbit hole, and then I forget the research that I was originally starting to do, and I got to double back on all of that, and it's but it makes it fun, right? I mean, it makes it fun because you always end up learning something.
Yeah. No, that's so true. So Brady, do you are you currently working on a layout, or is it in the planning stages? What's the I guess maybe just to kind of tease us for the discussion later, where you're at right now?
Yeah. So right now I don't have the space really to have a full-on layout. It's definitely more in the planning stages, and more focusing on building models, especially I think the level of detail, super detailing that people do a lot these days, I feel like, and especially so right now just more focusing on building models, and just always, it's always in my head though, just thinking about well, let's say I could turn the laundry room into a layout space as a shelf layout or some. Somebody mentioned in the chat, Fremo, just do there are a lot of options, and you don't need to start out with a huge basement size layout like the VNO, you know, and I think we'll get into that later, how my grandpa started, you know, small, just like a lot of other modelers do.
Yeah, exactly. So thanks for the little bit of introduction about yourself, Brady. So just to kind of give the section crew in the chat, we got about 130 of us here tonight. So good group of folks. So just be sure, if you're in the chat this evening, let's keep the conversation about model railroading, the topic at hand, the VNO, home shops, that type of stuff. We do have moderators in the chat. They're the folks with the little blue wrenches next to their name. If you get out of line, they will give you the stanky boot. So make sure that we have a good time tonight. And if you have questions for Brad, Brady, Chris, and Doug, make sure that you get them in the chat. David Winther, I do see your question about the Afton division and the Gawley division. We will get those when we kind of do our focus on the VNO proper. But I did want to kick it over to Chris, because Chris has got a few things that we're going to talk about. He's got a couple of I guess, packages of pictures that he wants to share with us, and he wants to talk about home shops a little bit, and some of the offerings, but also a little bit of the history. So, Chris, did I tee that up okay, or was it too awkward or cringy?
You did just fine. We'll get it better.
Okay, I was playing it in my head, and it sounded really good up here, but when it comes out, that's where the problems happen. So,
I'm right there with you.
Yeah. So
that was perfect. I really appreciate that. Part of the reason we reached out and we specifically invited Brad and Brady McClelland is because here at Home Shops we've got a new car to announce officially. We've done some teasers on social media, but this is a big announcement for us, and it does have a couple of VNO related items. Which of course,
let me know when you want me to add it, Chris.
Yeah, sure. You can go ahead and show it right now.
All right.
So our official announcement is a number of firsts. It's our first Atlas car. It's our first N-scale car. It's our first real transition era offering, which a lot of folks have shared with us that we sure want to have freelance railroads, but cars on our railroad, but everything you're doing is too modern. So this is a project that's actually been about 2 years in the works. And the cars are on the water, and so it's go time to announce it and launch it, and maybe even make them available for pre-sale.
Whew.
So we've got the USRA steel rebuilt boxcar is what this is. Many of the manufacturers that we've worked with did not have a concurrent N scale and HO scale offering of the same car, but this car was offered to us in both scales, and we decided to go ahead and do all road names in both scales. And you'll see that this particular offering has got a lot of big names: Cat Mountain, Santa Fe, Delta Lines, Ohio Southern, Virginia Midland, and 2 VNO versions that we'll get into. And the N-scale cars look very, very similar. This is just, we're really proud to have 2 scale. So you can see the HO scale in the back behind the N-scale car. Very similar. There's some slight differences, like the way the ladder on the right is, but that's something we get to take liberties with freelance. So the first road name is David Barrow's Cat Mountain Santa Fe. This is a picture of the HO version car, and it is our second Cat Mountain offering. We did a Tangent PS 4427 hopper, which is a slightly more modern car than this one. And it's a play on, or not a play on, but it's a clone, if you will, of some of the Santa Fe markings and data with the new reporting marks, the new number series, and the Cat Mountain in the same font that the Santa Fe used. I do want to give a shout out to a few folks here that have railroads. This particular photograph was taken on John Haney's CNO branch line railroad. He lives here in the Fort Worth area. We've also got some from Mike Mackey. He let us take pictures on his layout. And the N-scale photos are all taken on Dean Ferris's Oregon Joint Line railroad as we
Joint
go.
line.
Oregon Joint Line.
Yeah, everyone together, right? The little
Yes.
harmony that he does.
The second railroad here is the Delta Lines, and this is one that I've talked about several on several podcasts. And the stock photos here were taken by Ken Fitzgerald locally as well, so he's helping us out. Delta Lines, and Brad and Brady, you might chime in. You know, there's a lot of comments I see in the thread here. There's a lot of people talking about how the V&O has inspired them, and I have a feeling that Frank Ellison's Delta Lines is one of the railroads that may have inspired your dad and Tony Kester and Steve King to freelance. Frank Ellison formed this Delta Lines in the 1920s, and it was written about in, I think, 147 articles over the span of about 40 years. The home layout, the actual physical layout, was built in his attic in his house in the Lakeview area of New Orleans, where I grew up a generation or two later. So it's kind of personal and special to me to have the Delta Lines offered finally in a concrete model.
That's a really cool logo he has there.
Yeah, he incorporated the triangle Delta with the logo, and you know, as we think about the legacy of the Delta Lines, everything that is era appropriate for when Frank modeled, we're going to be pretty true to that particular version of the logo. We've also got some ideas and some projects in the works where we're bringing the Delta Lines into modern day.
What?
So there's we'll share that for future. As a matter of fact, we probably should have at some point an entire Delta Lines episode, but
that would be cool.
Yeah, so there is a project in the works, and we'll be unveiling a modern Delta Lines look. You know, a lot of railroads, BNSF did a logo change, right? Conrail updated their logo. You know, a lot of railroads, Norfolk Southern changed their logo up. So we thought for more modern cars, we would have a more contemporary look and feel to it. So we're pretty excited about that. Third road is Jim Hediger's Ohio Southern. Jim Hediger, who recently passed, was just an amazing guy to talk to. When I was at the St. Louis RPM 3 years ago, I must have had 7 or 8 people come up to me and say, "When are you going to do an Ohio Southern car?" And I said, "Well, I don't have a contact. I don't know him. Have you got any ideas?" And I mentioned that to all 7, and one of them pulled out a business card, wrote down a phone number, and said, "Call this number." Well, that's what I did. And on the other end was Jim Hediger, and I explained to him who I was and what I was doing with HomeShops and how interested we'd be in doing a Ohio Southern car. And man, I'm going to tell you, the conversations that we had were just awesome. He loved to talk about his time at Model Railroader magazine. He loved to talk about the DT&I influence on his Ohio Southern Railroad, and we got to design 3 cars before he passed together, and he signed off on. And this particular Ohio Southern car is basically a DT&I data lookalike, but it includes his classic Compass logo with the orange points and the Ohio Southern logo in the middle. So that's really exciting to have that in this offering. Peeking into the picture there is an orange Ohio Southern GP7. If you reach out to Dan Munson or Dan from Dan and Jenny's Train Shack, this was actually, he purchased Jim Hediger's collection and has most of it available for sale. And in Jim's collection was a lot of DT&I locomotives that he's relettering Ohio Southern in commemoration of that. So I'm very excited to have that engine. Jason Cripps of Georgia Bigfoot has it in his possession right now. He's texting me wanting me to validate the sound file on it, but he's adding sound to it as we speak. So we'll see that locomotive in a lot of our social media posts moving forward. The St. Louis County Railway is a freelance model railroad belonging to a fellow named Ed Stoll. Ed's a really neat fella, and I met him at that same St. Louis RPM. And there's not a whole lot of freelance railroads that came across my radar that are appropriate for transition era equipment. But his was, and just a neat guy. He worked for the New York Central and then the Katy, and he's retired, and he lives in Temple, Texas. And this is just a sharp car with basically it's a W green, black ends, gold lettering and logo. So this is the only offering or car road name in this release that's not a big name, but I sure feel like it's a sharp looking car that would be a great addition and complement to the rest of the cars in this fleet. This is a shot of that car on Mike Mackey's layout, spotted to a team track. Virginia Midland. Now this is Steve King's Virginia Midland, which is part of the Appalachian Lines trilogy, along with Alan McClelland's Virginian Ohio and Tony Kester's Allegheny Midland or Midland Road. And this is a first in a number of ways. That logo, I don't believe, has ever been produced on a freight car before. Most of all of the Virginia Midland equipment that has been manufactured or produced, and it's not much, were post-Appalachian Line. So before 1968, or Brad and Brady, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think 1968 or 1969 is when the Appalachian Lines was formed, which is the merger between the Virginia Midland, the Virginian Ohio, and the Allegheny Midland. And so before that point in time, these were separate entities, and these railroads had their own identities and logos. And after the merger, they took on a similar identity with the avant-garde font and the V&O AM VM logos. They were just different colors. So the Virginia Midland took on a green appearance, the V&O stuck with the blue, and the Allegheny Midland had the red color in the letters of the logo on the equipment. But so working with Steve King and some folks that go to his layout and operate, that logo was hand drawn on a large piece of cardboard on the wall of the basement where his layout is. And there was one photograph of a single boxcar that I could find that had that logo on it, and I thought we need to make this available. And that font, that style of lettering that the Virginia Midland is on the left-hand side of the car was on that one car that we had a photograph of that I think was made with Rail Graphics decals. So so the Virginia Midland, now we can add to the fleet of pre-Appalachian Lines equipment out there. And then there's this. You'll notice a familiar logo and maybe an unfamiliar name. Hopefully after Brad and Brady and Doug and we finish this episode, it'll make a little bit, it'll be familiar. But the Miami Valley Railroad is a freelance creation of Alan McClelland, which was, I believe, and behave yourself, Mike, but I think it was S scale originally. Is that right, Brady?
Yeah, that's correct. His my grandpa's very first layout was originally S scale before he transitioned to HO scale.
So Brad mentioned a fellow named Patrick Harris, and we'll talk about him a couple times. Patrick and I have known each other for many, many years, and we both have a freelance interest. And Patrick has a company called Three Notch Trains, or a brand where he's been doing also different types of freelance cars. And I give him credit for the introduction to Brad as couple of projects came up a few years ago, and the relationship since then has just been awesome. And we did a preparation for a potential podcast. Brad, me, Alan, and Patrick on a Zoom. And we were looking at a number of things, and the Miami Valley surfaced. And we'll talk about NMRA Cincinnati chapter number 7 in a little bit. But as that topic came up, Alan's demeanor changed just a little bit, and he started talking about the Miami Valley and how it was his original freelance road and how he had incorporated it. I think, Brad, it was became a subdivision or a route of the V&O in his storyline.
Yeah, I think that's correct. He wanted to keep it alive, so it was like the Miami Valley Railroad was a railroad that V&O eventually took over to get to the Dayton, Ohio area.
And yeah, that's how I recall it. And on that Zoom, Patrick and I bounced some ideas off of each other, and we were sketching different designs right there with you and Alan. And we kind of like the clone look of, or we thought it was appropriate to have a clone look and just keep true to the V&O corporate branding, but have the Miami Valley Railroad and the MVR reporting marks. So that car is in this offering, as well as, of course, a standard V&O version. And that particular car and railroad, I don't think needs a standalone introduction that's lengthy here, because that's what this is all about. But just to have V&O equipment on railroads that are of this era, I think is something that folks really want to have. And these cars, Atlas did an awesome job. The lettering is crisp. All of the artwork was designed by Jim Abbott of Highball Graphics for all 7 of these. He was our partner that did the vector art for all of them, and he included some of his knowledge of data and re-stenciling and shop codes, and so all of these cars have his influence on them, and it's just an amazing release. So that being said, Andy, that is the release. 7 cars. The Atlas has advised me that they are on the water. Their original prediction was to get them at the end of this month at their facility, and they're now saying it's probably September, and we all know how that goes, but these things are in transit on the water. So we're going to make them available for pre-sale, and that's really helpful for us, because this isn't the day job. And the pre-sales allow us to keep making more and more of these orders, and the pre-sales let us write the check to the manufacturers when they show up at their facility. And the support of all of our buyers is just awesome, and that's what this process is.
I have a question for you, Chris.
Yes, sir.
Did you find doing a transition era car? Do you find that it has more challenges than doing like a more modern era car or something a little bit more contemporary? Because you do have to do the data and everything for the more contemporary stuff. It's pretty much out there, right?
Yeah.
You have to really kind of dig on some of this stuff, don't you? Did you find certain challenges to doing this run compared to what?
Yeah, and the different roads had different challenges based on the amount of information that was available. Obviously, with the Delta lines, there's very, very few people that were alive and operating in New Frank. Though there is a Delta Lines Friends of the Delta Lines Facebook page that yields some information. But I kind of feel like the further we go back, the more like the research process becomes more like what model manufacturers of prototype railroads go through, because you're looking for photos, you're looking for anything that can give you clues as to what color this car would have been, what would the number series have been, where would the logos have been. So yeah, that research is a little bit different than working with a fellow who it is his railroad and it's in his head, and he can come up with the answer on the spot. Like with Ed Stoll, we were able to develop that car in direct conversation with him. What are the colors? What's the number series? How would the logo have been sized and placed, right? So for sure, it's a little more challenging when you go further back into history.
Yeah. So this is a head nod to the section crew. There's been a lot of questions about where can you get these cars, and some people in the chat have already purchased them. So I'm going to put a ticker up there on the bottom that's purchase the cars now at homeshops.net pages/advanced purchases. And then I'll bring up on the screen here, you'll be able to see, or actually, Chris, why don't you do the navigation for us? It'd probably be easier since it's your site.
Yes, sir. Well, there's a couple of tabs of interest. This is the Home Shops car or the Home Shops website. And there's an HO Freight Cars Paid tab. That is everything that's available now. And then this Advanced Purchases tab appeared on our website just maybe an hour or two ago, and it's live and ready to go. So if you want to purchase or make sure you get these cars, go to the Advanced Purchases tab. This lovely picture on the header there is all 7 cars on Dean Ferris's Oregon Joint Line, and a little bit of the information about the timeline. And I'm advertising that we expect to ship these cars in November. My expectation is that we will have them much sooner, but since we are asking or we are making them available in advance, I'd rather advertise a timeline with some reasonable upside than one that's too aggressive. So that's what we're advertising. All of these cars, if you buy them in advance, you get $2 off of each car, and if you get 6 or more, it'll automatically add an additional 10% discount. So first on the screen are the HO cars, and the buttons underneath take you right to the road number. It's a reminder that this is an advanced purchase item, and all the details are there. And scroll down a little bit further, and we have the N-scale section. Now, this is our first N-scale offering. So the N-scale cars, we just did 2 road numbers of each, except for the Virginia Midland. We did all 4 in the Virginia Midland car because Steve King is an N-scale modeler, so we thought that would be appropriate. So don't have a whole lot of data to go on as far as how well N-scale cars are going to sell. I've got a lot of mixed signals from manufacturers and dealers alike, but we wanted to do this and get it out there and make all these road names available. So N-scalers, show us that we need to pony up and do more road numbers on our next N-scale project. And with that, we're really excited about this because this is, in fact, our 10th car.
Really?
Yeah, this is our 10th car. So just a real quick trip down memory lane. We launched the company in 2021 with Tangent PS 4750 covered hoppers, and 6 road names are sold out. We have just a handful of the Gulf and Ship Island cars. So that was our first car. And then we did the 86-foot box cars. Well, no, I take that back. Not on the website. We did a V&O company service tank car. They all sold out in short order, and that was the car, the very first car I got to work with Brad on and with Alan on, and it was kind of the beginning of our relationship, which has just been awesome. So that was car number 2. The 86-foot box cars are number 3, most of which are down into the single digits for inventory. Then we did an Intermountain 5277 box car, so that would be number 4. We sold out of the Seaboard Central cars. We sold out of Tony Kester's Allegheny Midland, which is part of the Appalachian Lines trilogy we've been talking about, and there's just a handful of Kevin Kletke's Washington Northern cars left. We did car number 5 then. Our first Class 1 Model Works car was the depressed center flat car. The V&O car quickly sold out. We do have a handful of Natchez, Trace, and Orient and Michigan Interstate car is still available. And if you do, make sure you check out Greg McComas's Mac Rail. He makes just an amazing boiler load that fits perfectly on these cars. Then we did, so that was number 5. This is number 6 is the Mini High Cube with tangent. Number 7 is the 4427s we discussed earlier. The Mesquite Belt.
That was an expensive day for me.
That was
That was a really
very
expensive day.
expensive day.
Well, if it makes you feel any better, when those 2 pallets landed, it was a really expensive day for me. So thank you for your support. It's very helpful. And this is our first Cat Mountain car that that I mentioned earlier. We did 7 numbers of that one. The very first number is sold out, and there's a handful of the other numbers left. So I think I lost count, but I think this is number 8 now. Our first Rapido project. We did the PCNF 5258 boxcar and 8 road names. Wisconsin and Upper Michigan sold out quickly, and there's a few left of most of the other numbers. And the last episode we did on this show was our first Prairie Shadows car, and we had the folks from Prairie Shadows join us on that podcast. And just a gorgeous car. I think, wow, a lot of folks, this was their first experience with Prairie Shadows, and the Brownville and Ashland car promptly sold out. The Michigan Interstate car, the 3rd number is sold out, and the other 2 cars, we only have 2 left of each. So,
Wow.
Oh, wow.
and the MD Rail, which is Damon Curtis's freelance road, maybe a dozen each left. So they're just about gone as well. And so thank you very much for your support, everybody out there that's been buying our products and supporting us. And there is some stuff to go grab now. And if you buy stuff that is in stock, orders of 6 or more automatically get a 12% discount for those cars.
It's amazing.
So,
I just placed an order for 2 HO scale VNO cars. Yep.
Thank you very much.
Me.
And by the way, the Atlas cars, there's only 50 each of each road number. So
So you better get them now.
Yeah.
Yep.
Wow. So I just want to take just a minute, and this is me. Mike and I don't get any kickback or anything like that on, from Chris and Doug here. These cars that I have from Prairie Shadows are exquisite, and every car that I've gotten from Home Shops, the Intermountains, the Rapidos, the Tangents, they have all been insanely detailed, and the paint jobs and the lettering is crisp, clean, and it's incredibly realistic. And so if you're into freelance, or you just want to have one to break up a train of just dull old gray covered hoppers, this is the thing to grab, because I guarantee you it'll be a talking piece when someone comes over to your layout and says, "Hey, the V&O," and then they'll tell you a story about the Virginian Ohio. So if anything, just buy it as a conversation starter, right? And I just want to thank Chris again for taking the time to prepare the content and coming on our show. And Chris and Doug do just a fantastic job, and we can't say enough about them. So, Mike, anything that you wanted to add?
Where do I start? Actually, it's really interesting for me, being in a different scale, to see all of these offerings in HO scale and stuff like that. And like I said, I just bought these 2. How can you not? It's just because you're in a different scale doesn't mean you can't, go off and do something different, but Chris, you and I have hung out together at a handful of shows already, and it's, we've had some very, very good conversations, despite 1 or 2 distractions. We did have,
indeed, we've had some interesting conversations.
Yeah, we've had some very interesting conversations. And honestly, it's a credit to everything that you've been doing, because the sheer focus on when you go and start doing a project is, okay, we're gonna do this. Here's my thought. What is your thought? Blah 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 blah. The back and forth, and it's amazing to see and have watched you do some of the work in person. It's awesome. The interaction you have at shows. If you guys ever get a chance to see Chris at a show, I tell you what, he makes the time. He takes the time to talk to everybody that wants to listen.
Yep.
And it's really the level of commitment that he has given to the hobby is something that the hobby has actually been woefully lacking, especially on the freelance side. And this has really brought freelancing to a forefront, and I can't thank you enough for all the good work you've been doing. And the big thing to me is you don't just stick with, we're going to do this boxcar and we're just going to do this and that's all we're going to do. You've run the gamut of almost anything. And I mean, the press center flat cars, who would have thought to do those as a freelanced car? I mean, that was something that nobody would have probably thought of ever thinking of or doing. And look at it, they were successful. They're great. They're beautiful. It's awesome.
Those words are nice to hear. Sometimes I don't know whether it's genius or insanity, but it's definitely a passion, And
after hanging out with you, the answer to that question is yes.
Thank you. You know me. So
yes, I do.
Those are. Yeah, it's if it's not fun, then don't go all in, and if it's not worth doing, then don't go all in. So we're committed and we're all in. And I would say that coming up, creating these cars and seeing them get out there, it's rewarding. But that's the second most rewarding part of this. The first most rewarding part of this is the relationships, the people that I get to meet that otherwise I never would have. There's 5 examples on this podcast, right? Because of this home shop experiment. And, I'm just grateful for the connections that has made, and what we learned from each other, and Brad and Brady, just amazing folks. And when you read about something in the magazines, it becomes I don't know, it almost seems not real, something that you can't touch, something that is on another plane. And then I'm just reading that comment, and then when you actually decide to get involved and you start meeting the people, you realize Brad McClelland isn't just a legend, he's a real man, right?
Yeah.
And we can have conversations and talk about this and that, and then there's a whole nother generation there, through that relationship that started with Alan and Brad. I got introduced to Brady, and a lot of the projects we work on that are V&O related, Brad, Brady, and I, and sometimes Brad, Brady, I, and Patrick Harris are on a 3 or 4 person text message chat group, and we're bouncing back, here's this car that's available. What do you think? Yeah, it is. And then we iron out the deep details with the back and forth. And so everything, and that's just the V&O piece. Doug and I did a conversation, or did a presentation, a clinic at the Valley Forge RPM, and as part of that I started crunching some numbers, and at that time we had 42 railroads, freelance railroads, that we have either produced or are in the works. And when you think about the number of conversations and relationships, and I certainly learned something from every one of those projects and everybody that I work in. And I think, I don't want to speak for Doug, but it's rewarding and fun, and it keeps us going.
Yeah, it's no doubt about it. I mean, to build on what Chris just said, first and foremost, thanks very much to all of our customers, folks that have continued to support us, the folks that are making pre-orders tonight. Thank you very much. Andy and Mike, thanks for the platform. Chris, thanks for bringing me on the team. And definitely last but not least to Brad and Brady, thanks for everything that you continue to do. And I was doing some quick research prior to the podcast. Uh, yeah, read about the V&O for years in the magazines. Then had the opportunity in August of '97 to operate on the original, and then in March of 2008, got invited to the farewell open house, and not the one for the society, but the one that took place the day before. And that it was amazing. And to see Brady, the next generation, young guy, sharp, had an opportunity to talk with him last night. Great ideas, and I've been down this trail before where folks keep wanting to say the hobby is dying. Nothing could be further from the truth. It's not dying, it's evolving. And folks that think that it's not, in my opinion, need to take the blinders off, widen your focus, sit down and talk with some of these young folks like Brady. I mean, these folks know what's going on. They're taking it to the next level, and their enthusiasm, their technical skills. I mean, like somebody said, if you haven't been to a show where Chris is, come see him and talk with him and watch. And I know when I was with him at the Amherst show, all of the young folks that came up, I mean, we all know I can run my mouth. I just shut my mouth and listen to all of these folks, and it was absolutely great. So thanks to everybody here. It's a great journey. Chris is right. It's about the networks, and it's about the relationships, and it's about the fellowship. Definitely appreciate it. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Doug. I appreciate you saying that. And I think your last point there really would have stuck with my grandpa, because it really, the thing we were talking about this earlier, just the biggest aspect of the hobby that he really liked was the community, meeting other modelers, being inspired by other modelers, and, inspiring other modelers. And it's, I think, just the network of friends and people that you meet, and the enthusiasm in the hobby. And I also just thank you for you guys, Home Shops, producing these V&O cars and other freelance railroads as well, keeping these railroad legacies going, I think I'm very grateful.
Well, it's
Go ahead.
it's just fun. It's all around fun. So it would be less fulfilling if there weren't V&O people to interact with, So
Yes.
the things goes right back.
Yeah. So that's. I just bought 7, one of each.
Oh my
So
god!
I had to have them. I had to have them.
Unlike
Attaboy.
Mike, you got the 10% discount. Nicely done.
Yeah. So it's go get them now before I buy the rest of them up. But I just want to again, kind of, I guess, reiterate everything that's been said here. This whole experience of getting people together and talking about trains has been it's been fantastic. But we're not done yet tonight. So we had the announcement, but so I think now is the time that we're gonna dive into the V&O, right, Chris?
Yeah, and I've got some questions, but maybe first for the folks that did y'all pull any questions out of the thread here, the comments that maybe we can lead with and maybe break the ice with?
Yeah. So there was
a lot of
one,
people are saying their wallets are hurting right now.
Well,
and that's just every time we have Home Shops on, it's always an issue. But there was a question, and maybe this can kind of kick off the discussion here. So David Winther says, I know the Afton division is in storage with the NMRA, but do Brady and Brad possess any of the V&O Galley division, or was it completely dismantled?
Well, I'll start with the Afton division. Only a short section went to the museum, National Model Railroad Museum, and that was the town of Clintwood. Other than that, my father cut up pieces and sold them. So you could go around the United States and you could see a portion of like a bridge that was on the Afton division on someone else's layout. I think there's been so many people that say, "Hey, I got this bridge, I got this building." It's pretty fascinating to see that. And I think even Jerry Albers had one of the bridges that was on the Afton division. My dad, I'm not sure how he got a hold of it, but he was lucky enough to get that piece. So on the Galley division, we were fortunate enough, like Brady and I were fortunate enough to be involved in the operating session. And it was a lot of fun. Jerry's a good host. I'll let Brady chime in on this too, but what we wanted to do, we didn't want to take any of the physical layout itself. We just wanted to remember my dad. So a lot of freight cars, locomotives, and buildings that were progressively went from the Afton division to the Galley division to the K&M division, we were able to obtain from Jerry. And right now it's in Brady's possessions. Some of the buildings are, probably 50 years old by now.
Wow.
Holy cow.
Those early, I can't think of it. It was just, Superior Bakery was the model. I can't think of who it was. Anyway, so yeah, we were fortunate to be involved in that. And also we were fortunate that Jerry actually reached out to us and said, "Hey, I'm doing this." So
Yeah.
Doug, make a note of that Superior Bakery. We'll talk later.
All right.
Was it Atlas? I can't remember the name of the manufacturer. Well, anyway.
So I guess maybe a question that I is it Helgen? Was the manufacturer? Question mark.
Yeah, might have been one of the European.
Yeah. I know Illinois Midland Railroad is very sharp with the knowledge of stuff. John Garvin says AHM question mark. So
Yeah, that's what it was.
AHM. There you go. Cool. So I guess maybe for some of the folks that don't know about the Virginian and Ohio, or the V&O. So where in the world did this railroad take place? And a lot of us are talking about the different subdivisions and the pieces of the line. Where was the V&O proper?
Yeah. Dad, I'm not sure if you want to chime in, but yeah, it was. So my grandpa he had a particular interest in Appalachian coal haulers.
Okay.
There's a lot of slides that he took of the B&O, C&O, the N&W from the 50s and 60s, and you can really tell that that's what inspired him, because what he wanted to do was, and he would take a look at maps, topographical maps, and see, all right, I want to serve these coal mines. I like the idea of, both branch line mine runs, but then also bridge traffic between larger railroads. So to answer your question, it primarily in West Virginia and Virginia were a lot of where the mine branch lines were, and then also it ran from Staunton, Virginia, which is on the western part of Virginia, then through West Virginia up to Gallipolis in Ohio, and there the original Miami Valley ran from Gallipolis to West Carrollton, where obviously the V&O itself was based. Yeah, there. That's
Does this look like a good guide here?
Oh, for sure. And it's sort of
Okay.
because one of the things was you notice all of these other freelance railroads that that my grandpa wanted to kind of showcase and interchange cards with. So then, you could have Allegheny Midland, Virginia Midland, Ohio Southern, all of these different railroads, boxcars and freight cars showing up on the V&O. And of course, you see here there is a branch line to Mansfield, where that's where it would connect with for Lake Erie coal, and same thing with Tidewater coal on the east end of the railroad. But my grandpa, he didn't want the V&O to get too big. He wanted to keep it as a smaller railroad, so that's why he didn't connect it with like Norfolk or another Atlantic coast, where instead he would have to, I believe they interchanged in Staunton with the C&O, and just that allowed for a lot of bridge traffic between the Midwest and the East Coast. So not only did you have, these heavy coal trains trundling through, the mountains, you also have fast freight, perishable trains, and just all of the manufacturing areas in Ohio and Indiana, just auto parts, that sort of thing. Just you get a good mixture for the railroad.
That map right there, Andy, has got like the Mount Rushmore of freelance railroads on it.
Doesn't it though? Oh my goodness!
I mean, honest to God, I'm just looking. I'm like, I remember reading about that. I remember that one. Oh, now it makes sense. Like Tony Custer's, Allegheny Midland with the nickel plate. Now I see. Now on this map, I can see that connection now. I could see the connections like you were talking about, Brady, with all the other freelance railroads, and how your grandpa got some of the stuff going that he had in articles that were written about how some of the things were done on the V&O. This is such a cool map. It is so cool.
Yeah, but I believe this was in the V&O storybook from the original railroad model craftsman articles. I believe.
Were those all little mine, like coal mine branches that kind of whiskered off of the main line there? I think was that in West Virginia there, I believe it was.
Yeah, correct. So that would be where a lot of the money was made. You could say for the V&O is all those branch lines. Some of there's a map of the actual subdivisions of the railroad.
Is the line north from Gallipolis there? Is that where the Miami Valley would have been, or is that reflected on this map?
I believe the Miami Valley was just the Dayton to Gallipolis section would be the original. Right. Dad, correct me if I'm wrong on any of this, of course. But the Mansfield branch was a later branch line, I believe. I never heard anything about that being a like separate subsidiary road, or if it was a or maybe even a minute alley.
I never remember seeing it on a map in particular, but I just know that Alan wanted it incorporated in the story, for it to carry on the that original freelance creation that he had.
Right. Yeah.
I would like to make.
Sorry, go ahead.
I did want to say that Don Santel, that's the Ohio, Michigan, and South Shore. Smack dab in the middle of that map is Lancaster. And he had, the V&O had about maybe 3 feet of track to interchange on Don Santel's layout here in Lancaster. That's where it crossed on a diamond, had a tower there, we interchanged. So that was interesting to go to someone else's layout when I was a little kid and seeing a V&O come out and interchange with his railroad. So that was another section that was actually modeled. And then
That's cool.
Yeah, the SRL was South Ridge Lines. That was Dean Freytag's railroad, and I met him once. He was a fascinating guy. Loved his steel mills.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah. I've got that.
You have his book, Mike.
I have his book. Yep, I have his book.
I'm like, wow, how do I remember that name? And yeah, that I read half of the book on the way home from the St. Louis RPM. But so that was, I guess, maybe a point to kind of touch on. So, the Virginian Ohio had all these different connections to other, I guess, freelance model railroads as well. So I guess did Brad, did your dad like do active collaboration with these folks and kind of had like quote unquote a group chat going to kind of talk and get these railroads all on, I guess, the same page, or was it just by happenstance?
Yeah, I'm not sure how it all came together, but I remember most of them, I'd say, on that map were out of the Dayton area, and like one of the question was, that Ohio or Southwest Ohio became the Lichen Belt. I don't know who coined that phrase, but all those modelers got together and they made the map, and it was they wanted to say spread their legs out beyond their basement, and that's where my dad really just like took over, and he's seen a lot is based on the 1950 eras, the alphabet route interchange. So that was his thinking. When he was probably Brady's age, he was thinking that look how many railroads were around then compared to today. Where we got to go through this railroad to get our Chicago freight, and vice versa, St. Louis. And like Brady said, we need another railroad to get to the Great Lakes port. So they all got together through Division 3 in Dayton, and
that's
come up with that map. And
so what was that? I guess maybe kind of to dig into. I think one of the notes that we had in the show was, what was it like growing up, with the V&O, and kind of maybe share a bit of that experience. Like, were you going to operating sessions? Were you and Dad down in the basement all the time, or wherever the railroad was? Just kind of maybe give us a little bit of insight there.
Well, one of the stories my dad always said when I was younger, we went over to I'm going to put air quote in the air here, over to a normal couple's house. And I went over there, and I assumed that, we went to other people's house, we'll just go downstairs to the basement. As I asked my dad, where's their layout? Where's their layout? And
yeah.
He goes, no, these are normal people. That's one thing just stuck in my mind. it was funny when growing up with that. And another thing that was in, I forget we went to a national convention, and my sister was bored. She was probably a teenager, and we all took the family Ford LTD, a '72 Ford LTD with fake wood paneling, and we went on a convention. I think it was up in Minneapolis, and my dad was getting a clinic, so I was kind of my mother was watching my older sister and my younger brother, who's 5 years younger. So I got to roam all around the convention hall, and I have a name tag, it said Bradley McClelland, and they're thinking of it. And, here's this 9-10-year-old kid walking around, and these people are coming up and say, "Are you Alan's son? Are you Alan's son?" I said, "Yeah." "Okay." He's like, "Yeah." And he goes, "Well, I can't believe he's such an influence." And that's still, I still get shocked over that, how much of an influence he was and on it. And
Yeah.
so he, at the time I wanted to do modeling, and then I found out that I like being outside taking pictures more.
Oh.
So I kind of put aside the modeling, and I got really interested in the operation. And this is where I think we really shined on, let's make the V&O as realistic as possible for interchange and run through service.
Mm.
And for a while there, my dad always said there wasn't enough hopper cars for the V&O. And that's one thing he did. Because I remember growing up, he used to have the whole fleet of Varney, those 34-foot hopper cars or 40-tonners. And every road name that Varney made, he had it. And then he realized after going down there, he said, well, you go down the NW, you're going to see all NW hopper cars and C&O and B&O. So that's when he just made every hopper car, coal hopper, a V&O. And that's one thing, because people say, well, I'll give you my prototype hopper car. And my dad says, well, I appreciate it, but how about a box car? Because he was that conscientious about why would this Western Road hopper car be in Virginia? What was the reason behind it? And that's where I came in, and I said, well, it could be limestone, it could be something else. So he said, from now on, he said, well, don't put a coal load in, just make it empty. And then we would accommodate, where it was, and it could be loaded with anything, broken glass or for recycling or something. So, but he always welcomed the freelance roads on his layout. He thought that was the greatest gift, was to have someone else's layout railroad to be running on the V&O.
Yeah.
We wanted to make it realistic as possible, and that's where I kind of took over the operations about 1980, maybe around 78, and I really got into blocking the trains correctly.
Mm.
And that's where we really sat down and said, okay, this train came from Chicago. What type of freight is going to have? It's not going to have New England freight or empty cars going back to New England. It's going to have the Chicagoland cars. So I started blocking the cars, and then I said, well, let's do this. And I kind of explained to him that if we do this, we could capture all this freight. And a good example would be like the Clinchfield Railroad, how one end was the Seaboard Coastline, the other end was C&O. So I kind of introduced him to that, and he said, okay, let's do that. So then we got Seaboard Coastline power and Southern Railway power for connections. And once we did that, it became really fascinating to block these cars. And my dad says, when you run a train, you're not running the train, you're delivering freight from a point A to point B. And to draw that point clear, that we made some changes, that not every train is going to make a set out or pick up in one of our yards. I mean, there's some trains that go straight through the yard. The other thing we did was not all cars on the trains going to terminate at, let's say, Afton Yard. A lot of that, it's not going to generate a whole train load. There may be 4 or 5 cars coming from Chicago, St. Louis, or Buffalo. It would come in. And then they would set those cars off and they'd continue east. So we really implemented that when we kind of said, well, Penn Central is just horrible. And this is where you asked my input. I said, okay, we can capitalize on that because we made a lot of money hauling coal. So we would say, okay, it's more miles, but we can get the freight there quicker than if you use Penn Central. So that was our thinking too, that why would we run this train if we don't even get to Chicago? And it'd be sort of the alphabet route between the Western Maryland, Reading, and so on to get it. It was a long way around, but they had better rates and probably quicker service. So that's what we were marketing back then. That we could improve service.
So that's really interesting how you thought about the actual business side of things. I mean, some people, they were just like, it goes here, it runs there, and I could care where else it goes. But you really went, there must have been a ton of research that had to go into putting down or understanding how, trains originate from somewhere and then get to another spot. And same with like the coal where, it's coming out on to the V&O and going somewhere else. I mean, that had to be a long process. It had to take years to fine tune.
It did take a while, but that's what I do really well is he just, after each operating session, he just knew it took care of everything.
Yeah.
But there was a book, I think put out by the USRA, and Doug, you may want to help me on this, but it was going to show the tonnage on when Conrail formed, and they said, okay, this branch line's not making money, we're going to get rid of it. In this book showed, okay, here's the customers who are going to be affected. And it said like, I don't know, Brady grain and feed and what they received. And that, I plowed through that book because it showed exactly who the customers were, what they received or what they shipped. And that was a big thing. The other thing was where I grew up, there was a small holding yard. And a lot of companies, they said, do not hump. There was a scrap paper company. I think it was off the KCS. And they put the names. I can't think of it. Whiz Bang Scrap Paper Company, in the town. So I'd grab those things off and I'd make a note. I had a whole notebook full of all those businesses. So when a car came on the line that's hauling point A to point B, and it came off the KCS, well, it's going to be in a KCS boxcar, not something from New England. But that we just try to do that to give it the realization that it is going from somewhere to somewhere and serving the customers. The other idea I had was we ran a dedicated Ford train, which was when Jim Henniger came in, because he was the other part of it. Yeah. So all these auto part cars would collect there in Jimtown, and we would run number 98. He'd come in and pick up all his blocks of Ford product cars and deliver them to the Norfolk, Virginia assembly for their trucks. And again, it was in the Penn Central era where they were getting lousy service, so we stepped in and grabbed that. Kind of like what the UPS did with the Erie Lackawanna. Erie Lackawanna grabbed that freight from Penn Central, and very similar situation.
I love the little backstory about the rival Penn Central. I think that just adds to the mystique of the V&O a little bit. That's awesome. So then you were you in charge of setting up the operating sessions then?
Yeah.
It sounded like you had a really heavy hand in developing the scheme itself.
Yeah, that was like Saturday morning. That was my favorite thing to do.
Really?
Yeah. I'd go down the basement, start blocking it. We had 2 operating sessions a month, and it was broken down to my dad's group and my friends who were about my age in the late 70s, and we would have an operating sessions. Well, this story's been told over and over again. My father traveled a lot, so I would call everybody and say, "Okay, my dad's out of town. Let's all get together and have an operating session." And it was
That's
funny.
awesome.
The funny thing about that was, we weren't playing. It wasn't like playing toys or anything. We were like, everybody was into it.
Right.
And, I just invited people I knew who, like one guy I know, he just ran pasture trains, and last pasture train was run, and he would say, "All right, see you next week if you can sneak it in." But I got busted by it because he came down and he goes, "Something doesn't look right." And I said, "I don't know. I don't know a thing, Dad." And then we had a call board. People would sign up, and he was coming home Saturday, so we had an operating session on Friday night. And so it was like 2 a.m. So we were just like really slap happy. So we just start writing down all these names. Like Tommy Gunn, that's something like that.
It's just some weird nicknames, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
We forgot to remove it. He came down, and we didn't have intercoms there. We had like a big octopus style furnace there in West Carrollton, and he would open the vent, and I knew I was in trouble when he always said Bradley. He said, "Bradley, come downstairs." It was one thing weird. He never called the basement. It was always come downstairs. I'm going upstairs. So that's how he communicated, because everyone in the house could hear it. And my younger brother, he would kind of look at me, because he was more of a instigator of anything else.
A disturber.
Yes, love to see his older brother get in trouble and take the fall. And
Oh my goodness.
That's funny.
And that's where he said, "Well, why didn't you just ask me to have your group over?" And I said, "Well, I don't know. Didn't think of that. We'll see how long I was going to get away with it." I think we did about a year or so. But,
so how did you guys manage the operations? Like, was it car card waybill or timetable and train order? How did you guys do it on the V&O?
Well, everything was car card. And the waybill would either be removed or rotate. We would put the rotate. One car sticks in my mind was an Erie covered hopper that had pipe. So we had to think of a way, okay, why would this carload of pipe be traveling east and then later going west? So we had to research, okay, what pipe companies around there would do this. The other thing my dad also did was he didn't want anything to stand out where it was noticed every operating session, like a particular car. He would say there was one car that was bright yellow, was a reefer, and it was someone else's freelance road, and he said, "I don't want to run that car every day," so he would keep it off the layout, only run it like once a year. So we got in a rotation where not everyone's going to see the same cars. I mean, you see one Burlington Northern boxcar, where they're all going to be the same, but you've had one that stands out, like that gondola pipe. We didn't run that every operating session. We ran it very rarely. Just to make it appear.
That's interesting.
That's a cool idea.
Yeah.
The other thing that we did too is my dad and Brady and I would always get together and rack our brains. And I'll never forget when we updated, it was so funny because he said, well, I'm going to pull this track out. I said, oh, no, that's such a cool siding. He goes, okay, that 50-foot boxcar is bigger than the building where the customer's receiving that boxcar. And he goes, trust me, we'll pull the siding out. And I tell you, he was right on that. It looked really neat. Just having what he did, he removed the rails and put the rust marks where the tie plate was, and then we removed one of the points on the switch and straight rail it. And I was dead against that. One example was like the Gino Mine Company in Dawson Springs on the Afton Division. I was like, oh, well, you don't want to do that. You don't want to do that. And just wait. And he got done. And I tell you, it was one of the coolest things seeing an abandoned mine up this holler. And he left the rails down, but like he painted the rails all rusty and put weeds in it. And it was, by the time we got to 75, a lot of those little mines that only loaded maybe 5 or 6 car loads was just not affordable for the V&O. So, or maybe they ran the vein of coal out. It could be all kinds of things. But that was pretty neat.
Was it the KC&B? Was it that one of the engine terminals was converted into wood chip loading, right? Yeah,
that was Elm Grove. Yeah, well, we took over this Kelly's Creek in Bradley. Kelly's my older sister, and Bradley's obvious. And the V&O took them over because they found, I forget what it was. There was something on the KC&B that V&O said, oh, look, we can get revenue. This is a struggling short line. So the KC&B was just gobbled up like any other shorter railroad. So what they had to do is once they got the KC&B, they had to get rid of real estate. So they sold the engine terminal, like Brady said, and that to an individual who bought that property. Well, they had a really nice, well-built engine shed, and that just became a wood chip operation. So he was definitely thinking. I would have never thought that, but yeah, he said, well, railroad has real estate. We're not going to use it. We're going to sell it.
It's how it is. It's how it is in real life, right?
Yeah.
I mean, Mike, you can attest to that. They just dump it.
Yeah, they and sometimes they hold on to it just because, Sometimes sometimes they hold on to pieces of property for competition's sake, because there might be a connecting road that could actually access that at one point and give service if they sold it compared to the other railroad. So I mean, things like that happen all the time.
Yeah.
So I have another question, kind of as we, kind of how it was back then. Did the V&O kind of as because it started like in the 50s, right? Is when the time was set for the model railroad was in the 1950s. Did you guys evolve it like as time went on to like 60s, 70s, and then brought in like the different types of motive power and equipment to kind of match the times, or did it all just stay in the 1950s?
He started out in 1957, and then he moved to 1958, and we were in 58 for a long time, and everything was all the steam locomotives were brass. And then he was like, I'm thinking about updating, and he asked me this question. I thought, oh no, I'm a hard person to change. I stuck in a rut. I like to keep it there. And he told me that there was an 080 number 80 that was basically worn out because it was brass. And he said, he goes, look at that, in the side row, I can't keep this screw in here because the threads are all worn out. And what happened, one operating session, a side rod just fell off the steam locomotive. And my dad was like, what's going on with this? It was operated so much, it was a yard engine, so it was start, stop, start, stop. So then the next time we moved was, I think it was 63 or 64. because he wanted to get the first generation locomotives come out.
Yeah.
It was moved again to 67. And he was contemplating, he asked me that question. He goes, what about 1968? I said, well, traffic was slower then. And then he was contemplating whether to have the Penn Central merger. And that's why I kind of talked to him. And I said, well, why don't you do it after Penn Central? Because we have all these advantages now of getting a struggling, huge company. We can nab that traffic up quick. And then that was about the time where the Allegheny Appalachian lines was formed. And that was really interesting to hear Steve and Tony talk about how we're going to merge these three together. Basically, it's a family line system. That's how they looked at it.
Yeah.
Still have a corporate identity, but have a new corporate look to it.
And that's perfect for the time period too, the era. That I think that's always looking at what the real railroads were doing at the time and trying to emulate it as realistically as possible.
Yeah. So, go ahead.
Yeah, we were just talking base on the time frame. The next one he wanted to go was 1980. And I really put my foot down on this one. I said, no, you don't want to do that. You don't want to do that. And he goes, well, why? I go, because things changed when Conrail came along. And they would have their teeth. Conrail would have their hands around your neck. Just pulling all this traffic away from the V&O. And you also got to realize the chassis system was formed.
Yeah.
All these other companies were formed. So we had to be competitive on making sure we're holding on to this freight. I said, just make it 75. You don't want to go away from that. After I reasoned to him, he goes, you know what? That makes sense. We'll just keep it at 75. But he goes, well, I want a bicentennial locomotive. I said, well, yeah, that's good. I'll agree with that. And so that's what he wanted to do. And I think he forgot April 1st, 76 was a big day for railroads.
And we're kind of talking about how like updating the layout, and you can see the rolling stock and the locomotives all were updated too. They, you got new box cars, and the older cars that weren't either retired or put into maintenance of way service, they'd get weathered more, and then you start putting on like in 68, you start putting on the ACI tags that you start seeing, and then all of the COTS stencils, and you start getting into that, and just subtle changes, but removing running boards too was a big thing. Just making those subtle changes, but that do tell a story and do say this is a different time.
Yeah, I remember when we started removing the roof walks. Boy, he was like, because we had, especially with Athens, because they had those 3 gigantic holes in the roof. So we had to putty them all up and then sand them down. And he didn't enjoy that at all. And I said, well, I'll help you. And like what Brady said, it is really remarkable that when you move a time era, what you have to go to the layout with a fine tooth comb. And it was like the automobiles and trucks. I mean, my dad had a Ford Edsel. And I said, well, you could probably put it in blocks and put it in someone's black backyard. And he said, well, I'll get rid of it. But just things like that, billboards, buildings, industries, all that. It was just like, okay, we need to start thinking about 68 or 75, what was around and what we could get away with.
Yeah. Even like the gas pumps at a gas station,
Exactly.
changed.
Oh yeah.
those are those little odd details that you'd have to keep up with. That's for sure.
Yeah, that took a while to get everything updated because,
Yeah.
like Brady said, everything had to be changed. And the barcodes, all that, that was a job. I mean, you used to see we have 1,000 freight cars. Each one of them, you get the cow sheets and just cut them out and put them on freight cars. Make cars that were new in 67 up to 75. Well, it's going to have that much wear and tear on it, so it's got to look like that car is 30 years old.
Right. So there's, I mean, all of that thought to, not only just time and tie the place, to a model railroad, but also the time, the era, right, or the year, and just really bringing all of those things together. And then to shift it forward into time, that had to be a huge effort, especially on a layout. I mean, this layout was pretty big, was it not?
It was pretty big.
Yeah.
Because
So that's really cool. So Brad, you've certainly, I guess, had quite a heavy hand to play in the V&O throughout the history, and you talked about handing the reins over to Brady a little bit. So what's that going to look like now? And Brady, how are you going to, I guess, put your mark on the V&O?
Yeah. Well, I'll be honest. My interest in freelancing is more geographically. Like I at least right now, I'm focusing more on like a Kansas regional railroad, kind of what I mentioned earlier about
Yeah.
A 1982 regional system that would have taken over various Mopac and Santa Fe branch lines and sort of building a small sort of system out of that. But that's not to say that I don't have the interest in the V&O still and continuing that legacy, because especially the Mansfield branch is really interesting to me. It's different now, but like I even went to Mansfield and I took a bunch of pictures of all the industries, especially along the old Pensy, and you have there's a big grain elevator. It says "Welcome to Mansfield" on it, and so I think my interest in operations and sort of geography is slightly different from my grandpa's, where he was very much focused on Appalachian railroading, while I'm more like prairies and Granger routes. But right now,
Mike, that's your wheelhouse.
Yeah,
yeah, baby.
Yeah, just prairie skyscrapers and just So it's definitely been tossing around in my head. Like I could, especially now since there really isn't an active iteration of the V&O, at this moment. And the idea of, well, maybe the Mansfield branch could be something that I could tie into, because you still would get Lake Erie bound coal from all the mines in Virginia and West Virginia, but then also you get all of the, like that map showed, all the interchange from railroads in the area, as well as all the industrial centers that the V&O would serve. So, yeah, and at least era-wise, I'm pretty set in the early 80s, mostly because I know that is a lot of like what my my dad. He's taken so many photos of the era and rail fans so much that it really was, I think, kind of inspired me for that era. And also, it's pre really huge mergers. Start getting into the mega mergers with CSX and NS starting up, and then later on, you got UP merging with everybody.
UP gobbling up everything.
Yeah. And that's kind of, the modern, what would be the modern V&O. Like I said, my area of interest is more, at least, right now. And just like my grandpa, his era kind of changed over the years, and, maybe mine will too. But, with the modern V&O, would it be absorbed into like a mega system?
Like into CSX or something like that? Would that have ended up going like CSX or NS or somebody?
Right. And that might have been a possibility, but I think I would definitely want to try to keep the V&O identity. So possibly, I was thinking of like other regional, like Class 2 railroads that are still around today. I'm like thinking of like the Wheeling and Lake Erie, or just had a railroad that has a niche market such as the V&O, and seeing how that could play out as a more modern sort of system.
So when you think of that, do you think about how non-railroad industries would actually impact what the V&O would actually look like in a modern day type of thing, like with like the decline in the use of coal and
absolutely,
the increase in steel and things like that? I mean, how would that? I mean, you might not know that right off the top of your head, but how would things like that actually affect some of the decisions you would make to try to keep the V&O modern?
Oh, absolutely. Because I mean, we see it today. Because I'll go down like Railfan, the old L&N, and my dad did too. And it's just like all these coal mines are shut down, or there's really only like 2 loaders like out there still receive unit trains, or when a lot of the coal that is being mined is out west.
Right.
So really, it would be, how would the railroad adapt to that, like you said, that decline in coal, especially Appalachian coal. And I think it could be a bridge route, kind of like what my dad was saying, maybe competing against CSX and NS in the area, and just say like, these are major corporations who, you don't get face-to-face contact with, and we'll be like a more like hometown sort of more customer service, more like, you need these cars, we'll provide it, or even just like paper mills a lot are in West Virginia would still be, we could still use service from that, and having that like those major industries, and just having the connection to the outside world through a CSX or an NS or something like that.
What about intermodal? What about a V&O intermodal link, like connecting maybe like Chicago with Norfolk? You know what I mean?
Oh yeah,
yeah. Because I mean that would you would almost slice that whole timeline, because just where the V&O is set up between, like by Dayton and everything, just bang, you're just going. Yeah. It's almost a straight shot right over. You would cut so much time off compared to coming down and around or over the top.
Yeah.
That would be, but the V&O that I remember had some tunnels on it.
Mm-hmm.
So would the tunnels have been big enough to handle modern day double stacks, or even the regular intermodal piggyback, 89-foot flats, would
The
they have
doubles.
been?
Yeah.
The double
Right.
stacks might have been tough.
You know,
See,
it could be. Sorry,
Go ahead.
You know, looking at the prototype, you know, you see tunnels nowadays where you see the cutout that they made at the top of the portal where for
Yep.
the double stacks, or you know, full on if it's shorter tunnel, full on just daylighting it and making it possible, you know.
Yeah.
Or
Yeah,
even there's, I forget what, I think it might have been, I'm probably gonna get this wrong, but it might have been somewhere on the B&O. CSX had to they'd take double stack trains, and they would they'd have to take off all the second stack of container and then put it
Yep.
into a single long
Yeah.
train.
Wasn't Ray?
We were just
Ray
talking about
Arnott?
that with Ray.
Yeah,
Yeah. We were
from
just talking about
Around the Layout podcast. We can't stop talking about that guy.
that. I know.
But he was sharing some of his photography with us, and he was telling us, what railroad was it that they would
Was it
basically
P&W
run
or was it Norfolk Southern? It was something. Oh boy,
And they
Ray's
would-
gonna
yeah.
Ray's gonna yell at us. I know. he is.
Yeah, he's not gonna be happy with
No.
us failing the memory test here. But yeah, it was interesting because the portals were too low. They would just run single stack trains and then stack them back up after they got through the tunnel. I was like, I couldn't believe that. That was really, really interesting.
Yeah,
So-
Tehachapi was like that. You know, forever the Santa Fe ran just trailer on flat cars to the Bay Area because of those tunnels until I believe they were raised, and now you can run stack trains up there. So,
Wow.
but I wanted to point out that this conversation really is. I mean, I'm just enjoying this, and it really is at the heart of what freelancing is all about, right? We pick a time and a place, and we start with an idea, and then we work backwards. How do we make this vision believable? And then once you've established that, we think about how do we move forward. And you know, the sky's the limit with directions. You know, in my mind, what if the V&O were part of, or the Appalachian lines were part of the conversation when Conrail was split up? Maybe there were three people carving that up.
Mm-hmm.
Right, because the V&O grew, the Appalachian lines was it, you know, to Brad's point earlier, you know, they had the service advantage, you know, and maybe that competition could have been argued to have been necessary with the Conrail split up, and now you've got a whole new history. There's just so many different ways that this can go, and having these conversations is at the heart of what freelance railroading is all about, and some folks do it very well.
Yeah, and listening to the parts of the discussion where Brad talked about blocking trains, it goes back to what Alan started with, that beyond the basement concept, and thinking about not just the railroad, but thinking of it as a transportation system in miniature.
Right.
that's exactly what he wanted.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah,
awesome.
and one of the things that I was thinking about during the discussion, I forget what, I think it was 2002 or 2003, Pentrex did a Afton Division finale, you know, back in the day, VHS tape, and I guess they converted it to DVD later on. But Andy, you were asking some questions about the operations. If you can get a hold of that, that was very well done, and it was like the perspective of two guys that were rail fanning the V&O. And it was nicely done, and then there was interviews with different members of the team. Brad, I know you were interviewed in there, and yeah, pretty cool. I pulled it out the other day and was looking at it, and I said, yeah, it was just too cool for school. So
Yeah, I think was that the Afton Division finale, I think.
yes.
Oh yeah, that was done by Dan Hadley, and he he did this on the side, but he was originally got his education. He was a newscaster, photographer, video guy. So that's how he came over, and Dan actually said, "Hey, do you want me to come over and videotape the railroad?" I said, "Sure," and that's how we did it.
Yeah.
Yes, Alan Keller too. Thanks, Mike. Alan Keller did it, but Dan came over, and when I went to his house to finalize everything, he goes, look at this, watch what I can do. He goes, I could pull an EMD and dynamic brakes, and I could pull a GE and dynamic brakes, merge them together, and create the sound he showed me. I was like, wow.
Yeah.
Gee, this is incredible.
Yeah, it was awesome.
Yeah, he got everything just down perfect. But I did want to say that, getting back to the intermodal, when Athearn came out with their 86-foot flat cars, we put them together and we ran them, and then we noticed that the trains kept on coming to a stop in the tunnels. So then we looked at the corner of the freight car, and there was little pieces of plaster where the curves were so tight that they were rubbing against the tunnel portals. Because what my dad did, he would make tunnels out of brick and would plaster them. Well, you like to plaster because then you can watercolor them, and that watercolor is really, since plaster, after it's cured, really absorbs the colors. Well, it just takes one little nick, and we looked in the tunnel, you can see all these nicks where these cars were hitting the tunnels. So therefore, then he shortened the 86-foot cars down smaller so they would fit. And even with the Autorex, if you ever noticed the Autorex, to the naked eye, you wouldn't notice it, but if you really looked at it, you notice it's not 86 foot. I think he made it down to 78 foot or 76 foot car, just because
wow.
Yeah, because when he built the Athearn division, his mindset was for the 1950s railroading. You know, who would imagine there'd be a 60-foot boxcar running?
Right.
So he had all these sharp curves, and all the passing sidings were too short, and because that's his generation, that's how they did it. And I think he was seeing beyond that. He's like, because he always told me there's got to be yes, the Autorex were shortened too. I lost my train of thought.
Yeah, it's that's really interesting that he, just so that we didn't, he would shorten the Autorex down so he can make the corners in the tunnels.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Everything, because if you look at older pictures, it was like a steam engine and maybe 7 or 8 cars, and that would be perfect for that era.
Yeah.
One thing he always stressed to me, and he said, I don't want the V&O to be in a circle. It's going to go point to point. And so I thought that was just, I didn't understand why, but as older I got, now I understood his thinking. And I said, wow, that's a good idea.
Yeah, it's the real trains don't run in circles either, right? They go point to point.
Yeah.
And it seems that he's encompassed, or you guys have all encompassed, all the facets of the real railroad into the model. But I mean, I would disagree with your dad. I didn't shorten any of my cars. I just removed some of my house. So, I have 80 passenger cars that I run through this portal behind me, and I ended up taking out more of the wall to get them to go through and around. So that was, but we won't tell the wife that though. It was a different way to approach the same problem. So.
What I'm hearing is all of this is building on, the principles that Frank Ellison wrote about with the Delta lines, where he equated a model railroad or the model railroad experience to going to a theatrical production. and the model railroad behind you is the stage, and those cars are the actors, and what they do is the plot in the script. And people adapt that. The idea is to make the viewer's experience and the operator's experience believable, so they can get immersed in, I'm standing here. And you can do it by, create that stage by removing part of your house, or you can move it by making the actors fit on the stage, right? But it all ties into what I'm hearing. All this is the evolution of Frank Ellison's principles that I'm certain influenced Alan and folks of that generation.
Yeah. So it's interesting to hear about the the potential future of the V&O and kind of, I guess, wax poetic about what it could have been, right? Was it held fast against the big mergers of the 90s and 2000s, and is it here today? And did the V&O, I think one of the questions that I had was, did the V&O lease out their power so it'd be foreign road on other railroads, that type of stuff? Was there any thought to that? If there was an excess of power on the V&O, would it be leased out to other companies, or would it all just stay kind of in the system?
I don't think he's ever approached that question before. I would think that, being the conservative railroad that my dad was modeling, that we would definitely, because you'd make money leasing out a set of locomotives to somebody. So I imagine he would do that.
Especially an interchange partner, like Wheeling and Lake Erie or somebody like that. It definitely, I could see that, absolutely.
Yeah, someone Illinois Midland, horsepower payback hours. That I definitely think that run through power. I mean, we kind of like what my dad was saying earlier. We already had Seaboard Coastline engines running, and then especially after the Appalachian Line merger, you had run through Allegheny Midland power, very interchangeable, and that was more just for my specific freelance interests. Like since I'm wanted to model like Kansas or something like that, pretty far from Virginia, but I was thinking, well, this is like 1980. Some of the Alcos on the V&O might have, especially they had RSD 12s with the 6-axle RS 11s that were helper power, and I was thinking, well, they could lease out that power, and let's say a brand new regional railroad or short line railroad that is in real need of power and that it needs cheap power, that could be a possibility. And at least gives me an excuse to run some of my grandpa's old engines,
Now, Brady, I will say this much. Post Milwaukee Road sale to the Sioux Line, I have photographs somewhere of Sioux Line power on the MKT.
Really?
Huh.
So it's not outside the realm of possibility that V&O power could have made it to Kansas somehow through some sort of, you know what I mean? That's an absolute, and it was on a grain train.
Yeah.
So it was the weirdest looking thing I've ever seen. Sioux Line Power pulling a bunch of MKT cars, but I mean, it was those things happen even today, even in today's age. In Green Bay here, we've gotten NS heritage units in Green Bay, and and it's just like, I think we've had like 5 or 6 of them come through town.
Huh.
And it's just based off of, I mean, those are a long ways away from home. So, I
Right.
mean, it's just, so yeah, the definite possibility being able to get V&O power out in the middle of central portion of the country,
Mhm.
that absolutely could happen. It might be like a 10 unit fleet that the V&O just has out there racking up horsepower hours for everybody else, and at least kind of a quote unquote lease fleet type of thing.
I know
And,
for a fact that there's 2 V&O SD40s on the Meridian Speedway. I know that for a fact. Photographed many times. You know, and this conversation is something I've had with most of the folks that are home road owners, and I think a lot of folks overthink the captivity of their railroad, and we forget that these things have wheels under them. You know, and if I imagine most people here watch Virtual Railfan, you know, and if you look at a camera at Tehachapi, you're going to see NS locomotives, and you're going to see CSX locomotives, and you're going to see KCS ones, but the ratio is less, right? Because trains don't change power when they change hands, right? So everybody has a horsepower deficit every quarter, and they pay off, and you know, the traffic flows, you know, especially if the V&O is a customer-oriented railroad. They're going to have stuff that's going to cross the borders onto other railroads with through power, right? So it just makes sense that you don't overthink, can I justify a V&O locomotive here? I mean, my father was taking pictures, you know, in the 70s and 80s, and he's got photographs of CN GP40s on the L&N in Louisiana and Mississippi, you know, because they were leasing them, right, when they were power short. It's, you know, these things, but a lot of freight cars are what we call free runners. You know, that load on the V&O, if a customer wants to load something and ship it to California, well, guess what? That car is going to be empty in California. And these railroads are not going to be they're not going to practice due diligence with regards to sending it back to the V&O ASAP if they've got a customer in need of a boxcar, and there's that boxcar, right? So, you know, there are so many opportunities to incorporate believable stories with these cars on different railroads. Was that you, Mike?
No, that actually wasn't this time. Thanks. No, I mean, honestly, to keep on going with that little narrative there, Chris, I've got a picture on my computer of Milwaukee Road in the late, or like right before the merger, in 84 or 85, Milwaukee Road Jeep 40s with Rio Grande Jeep 40s in Green Bay. MKT power coming through Green Bay, Grand Trunk power in Green Bay.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it was just, if somebody had an engine in the Milwaukee Road, needed it, they grabbed it if they could, and just went with it. I mean, I watched the Phoenix camera not too long ago, and there was a set of a CN ES 44s going through Phoenix, and I'm like, well, those are a little ways away from home. You know, no wonder we don't have anything here. They're all over on the UP or the BNSF.
Foreign power.
Yeah, foreign power. So
I did want to highlight, Rob in the chat earlier mentioned the DMIR, though, and just seasonal usage of power and stuff. And I could definitely relate, say, for like a grain hauler, you know, especially autumn, huge influx of traffic. You have all these harvests that need to go to port, and you know, you just pick up as many, you know, engines as possible to make up that seasonal kind of upswing. And same thing with like box cars, because I know that was a big more like 60s and earlier, but like I think it was, you know, grain hauling railroads would be like just gobbling up all of these box cars, as many as they could. And like, I know I've seen pictures like the Burlington Northern taking old stock cars, like livestock cars, and like putting paneling in between the slats, and then you could, you know, load it with grain, that sort of thing. I think there's There's just so many
Really?
possibilities.
That's a cool concept, actually.
Yeah.
Huh.
I don't know how I forget exactly where I saw that, so don't quote me.
No,
exactly on that,
that's a
but
really cool idea. I don't pretend to know it all, that's for sure, because I don't. So that's awesome. Love that. Yeah. So then we talked about a little bit about the future of the V&O and where it's going and Brady's Granger Railroad that is in the works. Definitely looking forward to that for sure.
Brady, do you have any art or anything you can share of your freelance concepts?
yeah.
Chris read my mind.
We like to see pictures.
Yeah.
Yes.
So let me pull it up here real quick. So a lot of this, kind of what I was saying earlier. I don't really have much like a layout or anything like that, and I've been focusing more on building kind of V&O rolling stock right now. So I have I have a lot of concept art from. It'll sound silly, but like an old train simulator game. And
Oh yeah.
That's a great place to test your theories.
Mhm.
It's awesome.
Yeah.
to
Not
test
silly at
theories
all.
there. Yeah, that's
Um,
not. Yeah,
So I just like, yeah, exactly what you said. It's a great way to kind of, in a 3D way, build
Yeah.
paint a locomotive, and it's so easy to, let's say, oh, I don't really like that positioning of the logo. I can change it real easy on like Photoshop or something like that, versus having to strip the entire locomotive again and be like, all right, I got to redo all this and stuff
Yep.
like that. So yeah, let me go ahead and so yeah, this is
When I was developing my own Texas and Great Northern and freelance, I used very simple training X drawings and painted
Yep.
in a much cruder way than what the train skins and train simulation is. But I've dabbled with some of that as well, and it's a great tool, and it's a whole nother niche in the hobby that's not given the credit it deserves, I think.
yeah. So so yeah, this is the so it's the Kansas Eastern is the main focus. So this would be the I was mainly inspired by Muskogee lines, which were kind of predecessors to the Texas and Pacific, and later the Missouri Pacific. And it was 3 separate railroads, but they all had they all kind of ran under the same umbrella, and this was kind of what I was planning to do with it. Yeah, and actually there was I think in the 90s a similar sort of situation happened. I think it was Omnitrax was the company, but they had a bunch of Kansas short lines under their belt. So this would be kind of the corporate identity of these 3 separate railroads. So the Kansas Southwestern and Kansas Eastern would they would have operation of a few different Mopac and Santa Fe lines that it's a little early for them to be directly abandoning, but they were low enough traffic to, I think I could make it plausible that, okay, yeah, they'd sell it, especially after 1980 when the railroads were deregulated. And then the Arkansas and Oklahoma, which is actually the name of the current operator of the Rock Island between outside of Oklahoma City and Howell, Oklahoma on the KCS. So it'd be possibly a similar operation where either operating the entirety of Oklahoma to Little Rock or just that section there. But let me see if I can.
Oh,
I like that.
So this is kind of like the concept art for it. I wanted to like put together like publicity photos in a way.
Sure.
So
kind of a little Mopac influence there a little bit.
Yeah. So I definitely
Florida East Coast.
Yeah, that too. Yeah, with the candy striping.
I can actually see a little bit of Ontario Northland in the logo too, with the way the little lightning stripes are.
Yeah.
This is really good.
That's really awesome, dude.
Mm-hmm.
Holy cow.
You know, it's one thing to show like concept art, but it's a whole another thing to actually, put it in real life. But I really like this just being able to kind of think through these things and design paint schemes like this and be like, well, maybe I don't like the candy striping, maybe I'll just go with the regular just white sill, just.
Did you put that on a Jeep 11?
Yeah.
Good eye, Mike.
I knew you were an IC fan.
Well, you know what drew me to it? The triplex headlight.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, the headlight. And then I'm like, wait a minute, it's got the IC headlight package and then the 1100. I'm like, is that a Jeep 11? I'm like, well, yeah, that nose looks stubby. Nice. That's nice.
Yeah.
Good call.
I was thinking, it again in sort of the 1980s time frame, IC was, or the Illinois Central Gulf was rebuilding all these engines. And I think this was around the time that the Jeep 11, they started doing the Jeep 11. So I was like, okay, what if like I had a bunch of old Jeeps that, really needed an overhaul and be like, okay, well, Paducah is not that far away. We can, have them rebuild them. And then this could be like our brand new engine to, as a publicity sort of thing.
I like that.
No, that is super cool, and I think Chris has got another home road to possibly throw into the mix here. A couple people have said, "Oh, that looks really good." So
I can definitely see those cars rolling across the Meridian Speedway for sure.
Oh yeah.
Oh, sure.
I could certainly see them on the Mascoutin Valley. That's for sure.
Oh yeah, Farland Terminal is going to have at least one show up.
Why wouldn't those grain cars be mined in a Kansas Pacific grain train?
Yeah.
There's just endless possibilities.
There you go, Chris. Another project.
So Brady, a question coming in from the chat here. How did you come up with that logo?
I based it off of stalks of wheat. So it just, I was like, all right, this is going to be a grain hauling railroad. So I wanted a very philosophy of a customer serving philosophy of like, these lines were going to be abandoned by the big railroads.
Sure.
We'll come in and try to still serve those who really could use the service. So, and I was thinking, okay, so like farmers and all of these very small communities that are, they're like the biggest thing in the town is the grain elevator.
Right.
Especially thinking a lot of like the Canadian prairie lines, where it was the big, the big thing in town, the big landmark was the wooden grain elevator that would get boxcars every autumn, kind of thing. So I really wanted to incorporate the kind of the stalks of wheat in the logo, but also make it a more modern kind of 1980s, late 70s sort of.
Sure.
That's cool.
It's funny too when you drive through the countryside. Like, I mean, I remember back in like the 90s, driving through the Kansas and some Oklahoma, and you would just see the old elevators, and they still had the tracks going to them, but they were all rusted and grown over because the big railroads, they just stopped serving them.
Mm.
And that's a really cool concept, that's for sure.
Thank you.
So yeah, that's awesome. I'm very, very much encouraged and looking forward to the progress on your new series of freelance roads. That's really cool, Brady. Thanks for sharing that. So yeah, so I think what I'd like to do right now is throw it out to the section crew, because we still have about 110 people left in the chat yet. So I'd like to get a last call for questions on the V&O and the new lines that Brady is proposing. Let's get those out here. And I just wanted to kick it over to Chris real quick. Talk about, so we had a new release this evening, and stuff going on with, this is your 10th car that's going on. And I think we've talked about a few projects possibly in the works. There's rumor that you're doing a locomotive. Is that still in the works, Chris?
It is still in the works. Let's see, I'm hitting the share button. I did put together, coincidentally, a little list of things that have been done V&O, and what's come out and what's in the works. Maybe reward folks for hanging out this long with us. This first car here I want to talk about, and as I was looking at Brady's logo and railroad, I've got a vision of this car coming out weathered and patched Kansas Eastern, but so many neat opportunities. But this car is not a Home Shops car. This car is sorry, I think I lost my internet there. This was a car that was done by Patrick Harris of Three Notch Rail, and this car is responsible for the introduction to Brad via Patrick. And there's a lot of neat things about this car that we've rolled into future projects, including the dark blue V&O color. It just looks good on this car, and it just feels like it's a natural fit for the V&O. But Patrick did this car at the same time I did the very first run of 4750s with Tangent that were the first Home Shops cars. And as we kind of talked about these projects together at the same time, that led to an introduction to Brad and to Alan. And when Patrick explained who I was and what we were doing, the response from Brad and Alan was just very positive and encouraging. And that lengthy conversation led to this car, which was not on our home on our webpage when we scrolled through earlier because it sold out. but the Virginian Ohio tank car is the first HomeShops car. And I'm noticing now as I rush to put this presentation together, I did not take the Atlas logo off the header, but this is a tangent car that we did in 4 numbers. Each one of which was also labeled for a specific diesel shop on the V&O. So the return to shop stenciling is unique on each car. Then we did the Class 1 Model Works depressed center flat car. That is an old Fox Valley Models V&O 7-post Sioux-line type box car in the background. So there are some models that had come out previously. This is a car that's been hinted at. This is a picture on Mike Armstrong's layout. We do have coil cars, most of which are produced, but I don't believe they've shipped yet. We're doing 6 road names of coil cars with Intermountain, one of which is this V&O car. And not officially announced yet. That'll be a separate episode, but I expect it to be hot on the heels of the cars that we announced today from Atlas. And then there's this. So we had an opportunity to get in on their first C30-7 run. And Brad, Brady, and I have had numerous ongoing conversations about the development of this locomotive design. So we're doing small order. We've got 210 of these locomotives coming our way in production. And this is what they'll look like. And as a matter of fact, we got a picture from, well, before I talk about that, there's a lot of conversation about color matching. And the orange car on the bottom is another Patrick Harris 3-notch car. He did a V&O reefer through Intermountain with a blue that we matched to the coil car that you saw earlier. And I learned in working with some of these manufacturers that they actually use models as paint chips, sending them to different factories to make products match, which I thought was really odd at first. But as you begin the quest for the perfect paint chip, it's hard to find. So what I actually did was I surprised Patrick and ordered a bunch of these cars so that I would have V&O paint chips and sent this car to Rapido, who sent it to the factory. And this is a photo that the folks at the factory in China sent back to us of the locomotive matching the blue logo on the V&O car.
Wow.
Because it's really important by V&O cars or our products that, it's not a head scratcher. As to why the color is very different. So we do go, practice due diligence to try to make things match. And this photo was just sent to me by Rapido in the last 2 weeks. They are in production. This is one of those pictures that you see in your email and it just makes you smile. We did that. That's cool. And I would like to think that many of these C30-7s will not be entirely captive to the V&O. The Santa Fe is an example. They got rid of returned to the GE a number of their C30s in the early 90s, and man, you could see those Santa Fe C30s roaming the country a lot. CSX leased them, SP leased them, BN leased them, all over the place. So there's many storylines that you could incorporate to justify having a V&O C30 on your railroad.
Hey Chris, go ahead. Just a quick question about the C30-7s. Are all those spoken for already? Or will they be available for purchase?
These will be like most of the other stuff.
Asking for a friend.
We'll make them available for advanced purchase when I know that they are getting close. So they're not on the website yet. But they will be. They will be when the risk of a major timing delay is pretty minimal, and we'll do an official launch later. At this time, I think it will be early first quarter 2025, but these timelines are all fluid and variable.
Subject to change, right?
Yeah. but the fact that, Rapido posted some photos of their road names in these same blue bins, at that level of production. So I sent them a note and said, hey, are there pictures of the V&O ones too? And they were like, oh yeah, thought maybe you do want to see that. Here they are. So so that's a good sign that they've got the pad printing stamped on them. If you zoom in, you can see they've got the red and white labels for the electrical warning labels on them, and all that's there. So it's really encouraging to see a project materialize like this.
Wow.
Yeah, so if there was, up until now, a V&O C30 being a rumor, we can dispel that rumor with this photograph. They are being assembled as we speak at the factory. And these will be available in both DCC and DCC ready versions. Again, this is just kind of a testing the waters for the freelance locomotive market. Obviously, if you're going to start somewhere, a V&O locomotive that hasn't been done before is the place to start, we thought. And we're doing 66, I think, of each road number, plus a handful of unnumbered ones. And of the 66 of each road number, 18 will be non-sound DCC ready, and the others will be DCC sound equipped lock sound locomotives. So we'll hopefully get some kind of data as to what moves and what people want with regards to that. But they gave us the option of having such a low quantity of non-sound locomotives. We decided to exercise that just to get it out there and see what folks buy.
And I did want to mention real quick, because it looks like people are asking. It's based on the L&N CSX prototype with the nose headlight. So
yes,
we wanted to make sure to get that.
So when that's part of the conversation that we had with Brad and Brady as we were developing this. So Rapido is doing 8 different road name specific body styles, and we decided to go with the CSX version, which to Brady's point were Seaboard or Family Lines L&N engines. And so this is a late locomotive. This is we went with the later version with the large exhaust stack, and one of the reasons we went with the CSX version is it was the most generic, least frills, i.e. exactly how Alan would have wanted it. If we went with the N&W NS version, it would have looked like an NS engine with the 3 brake cylinders on each side. And if we went with the Conrail version, it would look like a Conrail version engine with the red marker lights and the automatic train stop box, right? And if we did the Santa Fe version, it would look just like a Santa Fe engine because of all the roof air conditioners and antennas. So this was I think we felt the car body that we could most put it on and be most believable as a V&O locomotive, and that was by design. And we had we're having ongoing conversations, and maybe we'll talk about this in depth when it comes time to release this locomotive, as to how we got the number series, and some conversations we all had about the evolution and future of the V&O roster, which I think is just a fascinating conversation. But this was a fun photograph to see too. I mean, they're actually matching colors that we send them. That poor reefer didn't quite survive the trip, but the blue made it where it needed to be, and it served its purpose. And you'll see it. And I've seen a lot of comments in the things that I've posted about variations and shades and color, and a lot of it is lighting. If you look at this photograph, that blue is the same as the blue in this bin, but it's different lighting, right? So you've got to get a side-by-side equipment comparison in the same kind of light to tell that's right, because it's and to your question earlier, Mike, about researching older roads, color is really hard to nail down when you're looking at a photograph. That if it's online, how is the lighting on your monitor set, and if you're looking at it in print, well, how is the page tarnished, and Was it at all edited before it was published, right? So it's really it's a time-consuming process to try and get it right. Just quickly, glimpse in the future. This was a project we started with Exact Rail. It became dormant when Scale Trains took over, and then I think everybody on here saw when Scale Trains announced this car as their own for about 2 hours. That was how I learned that the project was back on the radar, and allegedly first quarter 2025, this V&O will be one of 4 road names in this Berwick 7580 appliance boxcar order. There is a photograph that is a teaser that has appeared in some of our posts. This is a sample from Scale Trains. It's not accurate. The artwork had a silver roof, and that's been corrected, and the production cars will have a silver roof. So we're not announcing it officially, but we like to do that at home shops and use the product samples as teasers in some of our photographs. These things here are produced. We did 3 road names or 3 schemes of auto racks with Intermountain. We've got 2 Virginian and Ohio variants, and we've got an Ohio Southern car as part of the mix.
Wow.
The V&O variants are just the panel placement. This is the car that we actually designed with the one panel with the V&O on it, and the folks at Intermountain are a lot of fun to work with, and they're creative folks. And Brad and Brady, if you didn't know, there are people at Intermountain who are V&O fans, and they pushed back, or not pushed back, but once we got this project going, they said, well, what do you think about having it on 2 panels and larger writing? And we had that conversation. Railroads had variations, and we agreed to have to go with both. They allowed us to split the order of V&O cars with 2 variations. So there'll be 3 road numbers available of each of those cars. And we have a Rapido Berlin Mills boxcar in the works. And we've got a couple of Atlas cars in the works. But we'll just gloss over these for now because they're way out on the radar. There may even be something else that I forgot to put in here. But if you didn't notice, Home Shops is definitely, and the freelance modeling community are definitely V&O fans. And it's just awesome to be able to get these cars out there and allow folks of all different eras the opportunity to have just a little V&O spice on their trains.
And that's not the only place, Chris. You can find them. I think is it the Cincy Division 7 of the NMRA?
Yeah. Have you got a couple of Cincinnati
cards
there? NMRA Division 7 did a couple of cars, V&O, and they did a Miami Valley version of that wooden box car as well. So I think before our car came out, that may be the only production Miami Valley car that I'm aware of. And just to shout out to those guys, they've got them available on their website, and depending upon the era that you're modeling, some of those might look really good with our Atlas USRA box cars.
That's for sure. That is, bring this back up. So yeah, that's Chris. This is fantastic to see all this V&O stuff coming out and coming to life, so that it's the legacy lives on. And I think this is fantastic. So there's been a couple of questions here for Brad and Brady. Is there a modern V&O fleet roster, locomotive roster out there, or is it kind of end at the cutoff period in 76?
We have one, and you can actually find it through the V&O Historical Society Facebook page. I believe there's a link to that. But I'm kind of guilty of that because what I call my generation stopped when the wide cabs came out. And it was like, that was, yeah, thank you.
Yeah. Yep.
You just got to answer one question and you can join.
There you go.
So this is what I'm working with Chris to make the roster more logical, I want to say. Because when we did it, it's just everything was crammed in to 3-digit or 4-digit numbers.
Yep.
Yeah.
The short answer there is I think you'll see an updated roster. The roster that Brad referring to, I think, has a 96 version, is the latest. And I think folks are probably looking for something a bit more modern than that. You know, Intermountain did do the GEVO, so there is at least some kind of a blueprint for a model. But yeah, if you look at the files on that website, I think somewhere in the files is a roster that came out of a magazine,
Yep.
and Brad penned most of that, if I'm not mistaken.
Yep.
So that Facebook group is a wealth of information about the V&O. There's all sorts of pictures and different files about it. That's where I found the system map this evening. I went out there and took a look at it. So if you're a fan of the V&O, I strongly suggest reaching out to them on their Facebook group. So I did put a link to it in the chat this evening, and I believe I've posted it on the Second Section Podcast Facebook group as well, to make sure that you guys can all, if you're part of that, you can certainly get access to the V&O Historical Society group. So it was very cool. So there you go. CP 368 Productions joined. So excellent. So Mike, as we kind of come in and land the plane here, as we are now approaching hour 3, time has just flown by.
Right.
I always do this awkward, I guess, put Mike on the spot at the end of the podcast.
Yeah, almost 3 years of this I've been dealing with.
It has been 3 years. Yeah.
It has.
Yeah.
It has.
Yes. So let's capture Mike's thoughts here before we tie down for tonight.
This is dangerous territory, man. You know that.
Yeah.
Well, first and foremost, Brad and Brady, I don't know how to thank you enough for keeping the legacy of the V&O alive. Personally, Brad, I really wish I would have been able to meet your dad in person. He was a bucket list guy that for me, and to meet you and Brady to meet you, that fulfills that. Okay, thank you very much for coming on the show. I can't say enough about how the V&O has influenced my freelancing and how I approach things model railroad wise, especially with breaking down timelines and trying to do things, like we've discussed all night so far. So thank you very much. And I really look forward to seeing what the Historical Society does in the future. I mean, I love that page. It's awesome. I can't get enough of it. It's a matter of fact, I just downloaded one of the rosters that was on there so I could go over it. It's kind of cool. But thank you very, very much for all the insight and everything that you've done tonight and helping shed some more light on the inside kind of. I'm gonna steal Ray Arnott's thing. What is it? What's his thing when he says in baseball his inside baseball look of the V&O and everything that had happened in the past and where it is now and going in the future and things like that. And Chris and Doug,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, there's just the same. No words can be said. Thank you guys both. You guys are awesome. That's all there is to it. You guys rock, man. I mean, there's the future's, the sky's the limit for what's going to be happening here. So it's, I appreciate you guys. You guys got a standing invite on this show.
Right.
So that's all I got to say. I'm kind of, still kind of shell shocked at the fact that I am talking to members of the McClelland family. Is just kind of, to me, that's kind of, I am very, very honored. Thank you very much for being on the show.
Thanks for asking us.
Yeah,
of course. So Brady, what did you think of the second section and coming on the show and all that and sharing the story? It's a good experience, or boy, this is going down in flames here for you?
No, so far, not unless something changes in the last few minutes. It was a really good time. I was very thankful, really, to be on and to sort of share my memories of like my grandpa and just kind of talk about the legacy of him and the V&O and just and just the amount of kind of appreciation for it. It is funny, because in one aspect, I knew that my grandpa was Alan McClelland, but also on the other hand, he was my goofy grandpa kind of thing. We always tell the same stories about me wanting syrup on my pancakes and that sort of thing. So it is it is kind of surreal, I guess, in a way to see how many kind of people you kind of influenced with the V&O is really nice. And just thank you for having me on.
Yeah, and I think you have a burgeoning future as well with the Granger Railroad that you're putting together. As it progresses here, I think Mike and I would be very happy to have you back on the show to talk more about that. I think the section crew would want to as well. So again, if there's anything that you want to come back on and share with us, by all means, hit Mike and I up. We'd be more than happy to chat more about your future endeavors. So thank you. And yes, thank you for taking the time this evening to come on the show with us. So I'll do the awkward microphone handover to Brad. Any final thoughts here before we tie down for tonight? I know it was a really really fun show, and it's really incredible to hear the stories behind the scenes and how you got in trouble for having an op session. I'll never forget that.
Just getting a little bit of what we did.
Yeah,
there's a lot more.
Yeah. So, anything that you wanted to add? Anything that we may have missed tonight, Brad?
Well, first of all, I want to thank Donald Dunn, who got me started on the Facebook page, and then Mitchell Legg, The Great Divide, with the podcasts, and then Chris from Home Shop and Patrick from Three Notch. They all came to me. I didn't go to them. They're the ones that really should be in the spotlight, help keeping this legacy going, because they kind of pushed me to do the right thing. This is what we should do, and I'm just really thankful that all of this is happening and keeping it alive, and seeing some of the comments. I know a lot of them are V&O members on the Facebook page. So, thank you all. Excuse me. And I think if my dad was here, we would have been really proud of it. And
Yeah.
Of course, he wouldn't take
Absolutely.
any credit for it. He was really modest about that.
Mm-hmm.
Everyone was welcome. And
Yeah, I like to hear that. I like to hear that for sure. Doug, any closing commentary this evening?
The only thing, well, I just to wrap up my perspective. Again, thanks to everybody here. Everybody's had a great part in this tonight, and of course, the foundation was laid a long time ago. And I'll conclude with this. Having met Alan, he was a very gracious host, willing to share information, and that's rare. So I'll always appreciate that. And Andy and Mike, thanks again.
Yeah, of course.
Well,
Of course.
Thank you, Doug.
And then last but certainly not least, Chris.
Well, of course, the first thing that comes to mind is thanks, to you guys for providing a platform for all the road owners, road custodians that we get to play ball with, and then of course to the customers, that have made it to where we're still doing this. So thanks to everybody. And as I look at the six of us, I'm reminded that true to the real railroad, true to model railroading, no railroad is a party of one. If you stand trackside, you may think, well, it's there's that crew on that locomotive, and that's why this train is here. But you've got the yard job that built the train, and you've got the dispatcher that's got it across the road, and you've got the section gang that's maintained the track that they're on, and you've got the marketing department that has it all there, right? And every one of these cars that we have produced and that we will produce or that are in production is a collaboration of many people. We don't just spitball something on the side of a car. We talk to the road owners, and the more participation we get from the road owners, the better of a end product we have. And the quality of the V&O cars that we have done is no small part due to the participation, cooperation of Brad and Brady, and first project or two with Alan. So just I never forget that. No railroad is just a party of one, right? And thank you very much, all of you, for being part of this party.
It's a fun party to be at. That's for sure.
Indeed.
Oh yeah.
I love it. I absolutely love it. And we just by accident did this freelance week celebration at the Second Section podcast, and both Mike and I are being freelance model railroaders ourselves, and this was just the perfect way to cap off and as a thank you to our viewers and listeners is to have the likes of you willing to come on and join us and help celebrate that and talk about the V&O and talk about all the different products and the awesome things that are going to be coming from Home Shops down the road here. So thank you for helping us make this community, this freelance community, a really strong thing. So again, Brad, Brady, thank you so much for joining us this evening, and thank you to the section crew. A lot of engagement tonight, a lot of commentary, a lot of questions. It's just fantastic to essentially have this great discussion talking about one of my personal favorite model railroads. And even though I didn't get to see it in person, I kind of felt like I did tonight listening to Brad and Brady talk about the atmosphere and how the operations ran. So, and then obviously Chris bringing that back to life with the offerings that he has. So so I do want to thank everyone this evening. A couple administrative notes. If you haven't subscribed to the podcast yet, please do. It is a great way to show support for the Second Section podcast. And again, I'll have the contact information for Home Shops in the show notes. So make sure you go check them out if you haven't yet, and get your hands on one of those V&O cars before they all disappear. And then I do have the Facebook group for the V&O Historical Society posted on our Facebook group as well. That's the Second Section Podcast Facebook group. We cross-posted that for the V&O. And then I will be I'll go back and update the show notes and have the link in there as well, so you guys can all go out and grab the Facebook group and join and be a part of the V&O Historical Society. So for Mike, the Home Shops crew, and Brady and Brad McClelland, thank you so much. And we're going to be back live in 2 weeks. So have a good night, everybody. We'll see you later.
Good night, everybody.
All right. Take care, folks.